It is 10:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking news courtesy of Adam Schefter of ESPN. The Titans have informed Pro Bowl left guard Rodger Saffold that they are releasing him. This will clear up over $10 million in cap space, and it comes just hours after a report by Mike Garofalo of NFL Network that the Titans have cut offensive tackle Kendall Lamb. Kendall Lamb signed a 2-year deal in 2021, appeared in 12 games last season. That move will clear up over $3 million in cap space. Also reported by Jim Wyatt just moments ago, the Titans have agreed to terms on a 1-year deal with long snapper Morgan Cox. SEC tournament action tipped off in Tampa on Wednesday, starting with a 72-60 win by Missouri over Ole Miss. The Tigers will face 5th seed LSU in the quarterfinals tonight, and Vanderbilt steamrolled Georgia 86-51. 4 different Commodores scoring in double figures. Scottie Pippen Jr., the leader, with 14 points. Vandy will face Alabama tonight at 7 p.m. The Indianapolis Colts are the latest team to be on the market for a new quarterback. Adam Schefter with a report Wednesday that they are trading Carson Wentz to Washington for third-round picks in 2022 and 2023. The 2023 third-rounder is conditional and can become a second-rounder if Wentz plays at least 70% of Washington's snaps. The teams also swapped second-round picks in 2022, and Washington will receive a 7th-round pick and will pay the full $28 million of Wentz's salary for the upcoming season. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Okay, welcome in to 104.5 The Zone on this Thursday morning. Happy to have you guys along for the ride. It's been a crazy week so far in the NFL, and the phones are already ringing. So if you want to react to the Titans news that is coming down, Rodger Saffold out in Tennessee. Would have been the final year of a 4-year, $44 million deal. Adam Schefter first with the report that the Titans would be releasing him today. 615-737-1045. Jump in if you like. There's going to be a lot more Titans news and NFL news across the course of today's show. The news cycle, as far as the league is concerned, is on fire. Poor baseball, just pitter-pattering around in the dark, trying to figure out whether they can play games or not. And the NFL has filled the vacuum right out of the gate because quarterbacks, cuts, free agency on the horizon. It's going to continue to get, I think it's still ramping up at this point because we haven't even entered the arms race portion of the offseason. This is just everybody kind of retooling and preparing their financials to make sure that they can get ready to go. And honestly, one move yesterday, I think, may have just handed the Titans the division already in 2022. It's obscene what's happening right now in the league, and we're going to talk about it throughout the course of today's show. So Rodger Saffold out. That was right at the end of J. Mart and Ramon. That goes along with Kendall Lamb. That comes to a total of $13.7 million in salary cap savings between the two offensive linemen. You're talking about a couple of guys who are still out there who you could explore cap savings on. But at this point, the Titans are now cap compliant, and they can get themselves in an even better financial position with a few more moves yet to be made. I sit here on, Thursday morning at 10:05, and I obviously don't think that they're done just yet because I think there are some things that still need to be addressed. But as far as other potential cuts are concerned, having no knowledge just yet of how realistic these are. Well, actually, I know one to be unrealistic. I don't think Taylor Lewan's going anywhere. They're clearly intent on blowing up the offensive line, which we've told you from the start was going to be the case. This was the first position group that was on the table for the Titans front office to evaluate, hey, we're as old as we've ever been. We're as expensive as we've ever been up front. How can we start to get this thing back in a place where you feel like its best years are still ahead of it. And Taylor Lewan, at this point, for this organization, while he would save you $12.9 million against the cap, he's a better football player at this point than you can afford to lose. Rodger Saffold, while he has been, there was a time when Rodger Saffold, a considerable amount of time, when Rodger Saffold was the best interior offensive lineman in football and was certainly paid like that to come here in free agency a couple of years ago. But at this point, and some other news, by the way, I don't know how many, Lucas, how many times is too many times to hit the breaking news sound button?
The limit does not exist.
Really? Oh, okay.
Breaking Titans news on 104.5 The Zone.
Well, this isn't Titans, so we've lied to people.
Oh, no, I thought you were going to give us the Cox thing.
Oh, what? You want me to break the line? The long snapper news?
Break the long snapper news.
I got you. The Titans have extended long snapper Morgan Cox. 1-year deal at this point. So a University of Tennessee product who was added last season, a 3-time Pro Bowler, Morgan Cox, remains here in Tennessee. That is not the news that I was referring to.
You got something else.
What, more Titans news?
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
The limit does, in fact, exist. In fact, I think we've already reached the limit for me today. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network, the Washington Commanders are expected to release star defender Landon Collins after the two sides did not agree on a restructured contract. Collins will now hit free agency to cash in again. So if you're an SEC football fan, obviously you remember safety Landon Collins out of Alabama, who's had a pretty good career, was a good player for the New York Giants, got sent. Was he a trade from in the division? Because I know he started his career with the Giants and then ended up on the Washington football team at a certain point. Anyway, you're going to see a lot more famous names that are getting expensive, and their teams are ready to move on from them at this point. So Landon Collins, the latest.
He was an unrestricted free agent for the 2019 season.
That's right, because Daniel Snyder gave him an obscene deal at the time.
6 years, $84 million.
Right, which at the time for a safety was outrageous. That I think was before Kevin Byard got his mega deal in free agency in 2019. Well, I guess not free agency because he was an extension. Anyway, this is going to be fascinating because now, this is basically the existential crisis conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago at this point. How are you going to keep up? What moves are you going to make to keep yourself relevant in a conference that's never been as competitive as it has? Probably as it is right now. It's not felt like this in the AFC in quite some time because forever it was Brady and Manning's conference to battle it out over. And every once in a while, you'd get a Ben Roethlisberger or a Joe Flacco who sneaks in the odd Super Bowl. But for the rest of the time, it was just two guys duking it out at the top. And now things are wide open in a way that it feels like for a team that just scored 16 points with what was considered one of the more talented offenses in football last year in a playoff game, in a playoff loss, how are you going to find ways to keep pace? And what is it going to be outside of just bringing in Tim Kelly as an extra set of eyes as your passing game coordinator? Because the division, by the way, is still there for the taking. Like, this is how I was going to open until on my drive into work, Rodger Saffold got cut. Titans fans should be sending all manner of gifts to both Carson Wentz and Chris Ballard for how royally bleeped the Indianapolis Colts are right now after that 1-year situation with him at quarterback. There's a million different ways to make this easier than it might seem given the level of competition on the AFC or in the AFC. Because the AFC South is probably the worst now of the 4 AFC divisions. 615-737-1045. Kyle is in Savannah, wants to chime in this morning. Hello, Kyle.
Oh, hey. Hey, Buck. Twitter, man. I'm in the cesspool on Twitter. And the fact that some fans believe that the Colts fleeced the Commanders is idiotic. The fact is, Carson Wentz is going to the worst division in the NFC, and the Commanders had no starting quarterback. What did the Colts get in return? Jack. They lost a first-round pick to the Eagles due to playing Carson Wentz, And now, what picks do they have? If they want to get Jimmy Garoppolo now, they're going to have to give away a 2023 first-round picks and a lot more picks than what they have right now. So the Colts got fleeced, and they fleeced themselves. So congrats, Colts. Have a good one.
You played yourself.
Kyle just reveling in the idea. Are the Colts a poverty franchise?
They're a mediocre franchise.
I mean, mediocre is what the results have been on the field, but like they're down really, really bad in the last. Is this their 7th season where a different quarterback will start the year for them? Luck, Tolzien, Luck again, Jake Brisket, a.k.a. Jacoby Brissett, Rivers, Wentz, and now who? This is 7 different starting quarterbacks at the beginning of a year, Luck twice in there, so 6 different individuals, but 7 straight seasons, the Indianapolis Colts will start a different quarterback at that position. Is Chris Ballard good at his job? We're going to talk about that coming up next because, I mean, if you're a Titans fan, you have to be pointing and laughing at the AFC South franchise just a little bit northwest of you at this point because what they have done is obscene at the quarterback position. And we're going to tell you just how bad it is for Indy coming up next. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. We got to talk about SEC tournament basketball at some point. Vandy just dragged my boy Tom Crean in Georgia to end their SEC tournament hopeful run.
Lifeless.
Goodness gracious. That was there was no win one for Coach last night, kids. That was brutal. We'll get to that later on in the show. In the meantime, we're talking about what the Titans situation now looks like in the AFC South. And by the way, there will be developments as far as that is concerned, because we could have some clarity on Deshaun Watson's legal situation by as early as Saturday, because the grand jury situation, well, I mean theoretically as early as tomorrow, but I'm not sure. I'm not intimately familiar with the legal proceedings, which is why we have Dan Lust on. At what time, Lucas? Because he was kind enough to move today.
Yes, he's kind enough to move back 10 minutes, so we'll talk to him at 10:30.
Okay, we will talk to Dan Lust at 10:30 and get the a little more clarity on the Deshaun Watson situation. But, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think the Colts might have already gift-wrapped the Titans the division in 2022. And I understand, like, there's a degree of hyperbole there, right? Like, I understand that I might be gaslighting you just a little bit because the football games still need to be played, and you've seen disastrous losses to teams that you shouldn't lose to. But we are talking about a situation where, again, the biggest threat to you in the division has botched the quarterback situation. They have 6 picks coming up in the 2022 NFL Draft. 43 overall, a second, 73 that they just got from Washington for Carson Wentz, 83, 120, 158, 236. So a second, 2/3, a fourth, a fifth, and a seventh. And no clarity, again, at the quarterback position. Who would you rather see twice a year if you're the Tennessee Titans? Can I interest you in 2 shots at the Colts with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback? Yes, please. Carson Wentz, for as disastrous as he was at the end of the season, he was not an unholy mess throughout the course of the year like I kind of expected him to be. I think he got a fair amount of turnover luck. But the way that this thing ended, and if you aren't an Athletic subscriber, we bring on a lot of their writers because, one, The Athletic bought up all of the writers, it seems, as newspapers slowly sink into oblivion. But the article written by Zach Kiefer, who is one of the, I think they have 2 beat writers on the Indianapolis Colts.
Stephen Holder's the other one.
Correct. And Stephen was actually down here for the playoff game, so I think he does a little more NFL coverage generally now, too. But anyway, Zach Kiefer wrote a tremendous article about how the Carson Wentz marriage in Indianapolis was over anyway, because apparently, just as things soured in Philadelphia, they desired more leadership qualities out of this guy who, was almost single-handedly responsible for the way their season collapsed. There was a time that they had a 97% chance to make the postseason. And they blew it at home against the Raiders, and they blew it on the road. You want to talk about lifeless, like you just brought up with Georgia and Vandy last night in the SEC tournament? Lifeless is how you would describe the Indianapolis Colts, choking dogs in Week 18.
With everything to play for.
Everything in the world on the line. All you have to do is beat a just wretched franchise, and you couldn't do that.
At least Georgia had something or didn't have anything to play for.
No, Georgia's been dead basically since November at this point in college basketball. Listen to Frank Reich. We didn't play this last week when I was up at the Combine in Indianapolis, but this is where this audio is from. Frank Reich was being asked by Colts media about Carson Wentz and the situation that really didn't pan out in 2021. Here was the Colts head coach.
Well, I haven't sat down with Mr. Irsay in a while. I know I believe in Carson. I believe that, I believe in him. I stuck my neck out for him. So, last year I was a big part of that decision to get him here. And so, I believe he's going to continue. I believe he's going to continue to have a lot of success at quarterback. That might be here. It might not be here. That decision has yet to be determined. So, but I still believe in the person. And I still believe in the player, right? We're all in progress. I'm in progress. He's in progress. Every one of our players is in progress.
All right, I don't need the diplomacy because he's gone. It's done. Like, this is all the kind of stuff that doesn't matter. These are nice things to say before you give him the axe. And they gave him the axe. And by the way, like by all reports, Jim Irsay, who, you know, I know Titans fans have certain feelings about and has had some questionable behavior in his past, but Jim Irsay is like livid about this. And here is your head coach saying, I was one of the people who was out there on a limb for this guy to go get this guy. And this guy cratered at the end of the year. Now, Lucas was made enraged coming in. I was on a walk this morning. I try to get a little fresh air before I come into the studio, trying to enjoy the nice weather. It's beautiful here in Nashville, except it's apparently about to drop back down to below freezing if you follow Nashville severe weather over the weekend. Honestly, thank you, Caleb Farley, for all of your good works here. But I had to like back Lucas off because he was working up into a foam, basically, with the amount of people who were supporting Chris Ballard and what they deemed as a fleecing of the Washington football team, a.k.a. the Commanders.
It's the weirdest phenomenon in the NFL to me, in the way the media views certain people, is the way people view Chris Ballard. This was from Booger McFarland, ESPN. Chris Ballard is one hell of a deal maker. My goodness. All hail the man who does not have a first-round pick in 2022.
Booger?
That's from Booger yesterday.
All hail?
All hail. Let's bow down to the guy that doesn't have a first-round pick because he traded for broken-down Carson Wentz.
Buddy, how often, and I don't have the answer to this. I couldn't find it. This would take many hours of research, and I just thought of it this morning. But, like, how often does a team trade a draft choice that ends up being, through one man or another, a first-round pick for a player who gets traded off of the team that traded for him before the draft pick is even used? In what world? You just nuked them for the foreseeable future.
We're bowing down to Chris Ballard because he got a quarterback-desperate franchise to pay Carson Wentz $28 million. Because of Washington making that decision because they desperately need a quarterback, we're here bowing down to Chris Ballard.
Listen, everybody makes good picks, right? Like Darius Leonard, good football player. Quentin Nelson, top 5 guard, whatever, good football player. Trading for DeForest Buckner, good football player. Like, there are things that Chris Ballard has done fine. But on the whole, they don't win the division. They single-handedly self-imploded to miss the postseason last year for the quarterback that they went out and got after continuing to cycle through terrible quarterbacks, except for my boy, Phillip Rivers. And they felt it got to the point where there were discussions about bringing Phillip Rivers back last year. It's unbelievable how bad they've been as an organization, which is so weird to say because all they did is dominate. I mean, not just the AFC South, but largely the conference for the better part of 2 decades. Paxton is in Nashville, wants to chime in. What's up, Paxton?
Hey, Buck, what's going on, man? Thanks for taking my call. So I know we are on the kick the Colts talk right now, and I'm all for that, man. All for it. But I want to switch gears and get your opinion. So with Kendall Lamb being released, Rodger Saffold being released, and Ben Jones to go, how dumb does it look now, in hindsight, that Dennis Kelly was released? And he was doing very well that year that we said, we'll let you go, Undertaker. Like, how dumb does that look now? Because what I'm thinking, as, we were going to take hopefully we were going to take a wide receiver in the first round because we want to put weapons around Ryan Tannehill. We all believe that J-Rob put Ryan on notice by basically saying that, like, okay, well, we're going to give you weapons, and if it don't work out, then guess what, buddy, we're gone. But now with this, with us losing our line, and then you got Taylor Lewan, who was hurt a few and not playing as well as he's been playing, the likelihood of us taking an offensive tackle in the first round is extremely high now, if we stay in the first round. So I kind of want you to speak to that a little bit, Buck, and I'll hang up and listen, buddy.
I'm glad you brought up Dennis because, he's an unrestricted free agent, by the way. So, like, theoretically, you could reunite. But, Dennis was fine. Now he was expensive. And listen, we understood why they did it. Now the transaction and letting Dennis go and getting Kendall Lamb, like, I don't know that they thought that Dylan Radins was going to be a net zero contributor. I mean, you did get a start out of him at left tackle in the 49ers game, and he did play well enough to help them win that game. So we cannot ignore that fact. But yeah, I mean, pandemic-stricken finances led to terrible decisions. And one of the terrible decisions was letting go of Dennis Kelly, because now you're just in this never-ending offensive line cycle. And yet again, you probably need not just one, but maybe a couple, whether that's through the draft or free agency. The AFC South is going to be fascinating, and we have many news developments yet to come, because Deshaun Watson, at this point, the embattled Houston Texans quarterback, he is getting ready to meet or to have this situation to appear before a grand jury. Well, rather, the women who filed the criminal complaints against him have been subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury tomorrow. And here to break it down for us is Dan Lust, the sports attorney. Dan, what's going on, boss?
I'm good. I don't know what's in the waters, but it's sports law everywhere you look. So always happy to get the call from you guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, by the way, Dan's killing it. You need to check out the Conduct Detrimental podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Dan breaks down this stuff on another level that really, really helps you understand what's going on in the world of sports law. So what is for those of us who hear the word grand jury but don't necessarily understand what this means, what is Deshaun Watson getting ready to go through when these women appear before the grand jury tomorrow, Dan?
So I'm getting the sense that, even the best of the best NFL reporters don't understand what it is, because for some reason it's like, hey, if it goes well on Friday, the Panthers are ready to make a trade. If it goes well on Friday, the Steelers will be right there. And the lawyers are sitting here and they're like, does everyone understand that the grand jury is kind of the fix is in? If you go to the grand jury, most likely you're going to get indicted for some type of crime. So I don't know, we can start there. It's clear that at this stage, I don't think people are familiar with what the grand jury is. Put it this way, right? People are familiar with, like, My Cousin Vinny or A Few Good Men.
Mud in the tires.
Right. People understand when there's an adversarial proceeding. There's someone on one side arguing, and there's another attorney defending the criminal defendant on the other. The grand jury is not like that. The prosecutor is there alone, right? It's a one-sided proceeding. They get to cherry pick the best evidence that they want. And Rusty Hardin, the attorney for Deshaun Watson, he doesn't get to say anything. It's not a two-way street. So if you're just going to pick the best facts, and the grand jury is not going to hear the other side, of course you're going to get an indictment, right? That's why it happens more often than not. It's by no means guaranteed, but that's the nature of the beast. It's a one-sided proceeding. So, Buck, I'm sure you saw this, right? There's an expression which maybe I introduced a lot of people to, but us lawyers know it well. A grand jury could even indict a ham sandwich because it is one-sided. There's no one defending the ham sandwich. So you could put anybody in that seat. It's very tough to win and avoid an indictment once you get there. So I'm not sure who's telling our NFL reporters, like, hey, if it goes well, he's going to the Steelers. Like, it's probably not going to go well. So they're missing that very big if.
Well, and I love that, because, and by the way, for all of those fantastic sayings, you can follow him at Sports Law Lust on Twitter, where he's been tweeting out legal analysis. If you want to actually understand what's going on about this, rather than, which team is going to trade for Deshaun Watson once he miraculously somehow apparently survives the grand jury, this is the place that you need to be looking to actually get yourself informed. So he's in trouble, Dan Watson is.
Well, let's even say he avoids the indictment, which of course I'm not saying it's not possible, but let's say he avoids the indictment. Last I checked, we just had a full NFL season where there were no criminal charges, and Deshaun Watson did not play because of the civil sexual assault case, right? So let's say I'm not in the room. I don't know what's going to happen at the grand jury, but even if he avoids the charges there, right? Do you know what's still waiting for him? A civil deposition where he has to speak to these allegations. And in October, Roger Goodell was very clear that we don't have enough right now to put him on the exempt list. So the second he gives his deposition, which Buck is actually scheduled for Friday, he's going to plead the fifth at that one, but then I'm sure they're going to bring him back, the next week or two. Then all of a sudden, Goodell might have enough to suspend him. So the other stuff that was just kind of getting me annoyed at some of these tweets, it's like, we're going to finally get clarity on Friday. I'm like, did everyone pay attention to the last year where there was no criminal charges and he didn't play a down of football? So the best I know they're in your division over here in the AFC South. I think the Texans have the word out to some of these NFL people saying, hey, let's talk about that. There's interest in a trade, and maybe someone will bite and throw us, a third-round pick, a second-round pick. That's all I can discern from this, because whoever is reporting this is kind of blatantly misrepresenting the seriousness of Watson's situation. The guy didn't play football independent of criminal charges. So, I don't have to be right on the grand jury. The guy didn't have any clarity for a year. I'm not sure what magically changes on Friday.
Dan Lust, sports attorney, here making us smarter about the Deshaun Watson situation on 104.5 The Zone. I saw some people couching it yesterday, Dan, by saying that they could do conditional deals, but that was a very, very minimal part of a larger report. How often does this happen where the media, and I'm including myself in this because obviously I'm not legally trained, how often does it conflate things that aren't actually true about the legal process when it comes to cases like these? Not even specific to Watson, just in your experience. How often does this happen?
It's not frequently. It happens. You see sometimes there's an agenda, be it from the agent side or the team side. And I saw the same thing with you saw with pick protections. I'm fine with that if that's the conversation. But I'm not going to shout out the reporter, but somebody had said yesterday, that the Steelers, if it goes well on Friday, the Steelers are ready to make a trade. And I'm like, okay. So it's probably not going to go well on Friday, but even if it does, where's the conversation about pick protection? So, that's why my, I don't know if my tinfoil hat is like, Texans are leaving, that part out. Like, hey, can you tweak this? But, leave out the part about the heavy pick protection. Yes, Buck, where it's happening. There's a story right now that I'm sure your listeners are following with the Ben Simmons saga. He's about to play the Nets tonight, and they're saying Simmons is going to file a grievance, and he's going to cite the fact that the 76ers fans are booing him like crazy as part of his NBA grievance to get money from the Sixers. And I'm like, I don't know, last I checked, Russell Westbrook is getting booed up and down by the Lakers fans. That doesn't mean he has a grievance, but sometimes these stories are floated and no one really knows what to make of it, and they just report it kind of verbatim. It happens from time to time, not so much so that I'm ready to get in my soapbox and yell at everybody, but this Watson one is pretty egregious, and it keeps happening. The guy wasn't traded at last year's trade deadline for a reason, and had nothing. Pick protections could have been done there, but he wasn't dealt then, and I'm not really sure how his situation has gotten any better since then.
And this is why the whole thing is so laughable to me, because not only has the legal system not worked its way through this situation yet, but then you have to go through the NFL, and God knows that Roger Goodell doesn't necessarily know how to properly distribute punishments when it comes to these kinds of things. It's going to be a must follow tomorrow throughout the course of this Deshaun Watson process. At Sports Law Lust is where you need to be following Dan Lust on Twitter as he explains these things in ways that are easy for everybody to understand. Thank you, Dan.
My absolute pleasure. And guys, anytime.
Dan Lust, there with us on 104.5 The Zone. Conduct detrimental. Learn about these things in more detail if you want to. It's really, really compelling stuff from Dan. 615-737-1045. So, what did we learn about the AFC South, kids? It's a mess. Just an unmitigated disaster. This is what I'm saying. This is why I wanted to call Dan. Thank God for Dan, honestly, because I'm watching, and respect, he wasn't going to name names, but I'll do it because Dan's too nice a guy. I'm watching Rappaport talk about the Panthers and the Buccaneers and all kinds of other teams that'll trade for Deshaun Watson, or that are exploring the possibility of trading for Deshaun Watson. So either one, the person who is feeding Ian Rappaport the information is not informed on the legal proceedings, or two, the teams aren't smart enough to know anything about the legal proceedings for the quarterback that they're trying to trade for, which honestly, in my experience, is more close to the case. Because you see teams trip and fall on over themselves all the time on this kind of stuff. I mean, we just kind of went through it, last draft process, where we're sitting there after the Rashad Weaver selection is made, and then he gets into the situation where he's accused of pushing a woman down outside of a bar. People are pulling their hair out saying, how could they possibly not know about this? They just drafted this guy yesterday. And the answer is, well, there's a million different things that happen throughout the course of these things. And two, NFL teams may not always be equipped to handle these kind of things, i.e. Ray Rice and a 2-game suspension for knocking a woman out in an elevator. I don't know why the expectation is. I'm a little worked up about this. I don't know why I got all passionate about this all of a sudden. But the idea that the NFL is just know all, see all, hear all type of thing. No, they screw these things up all the time, and it drives me bat bleep crazy.
Well, it's a conversation that we should be past, right? The idea of Deshaun Watson being up for trade. Like the conversation of it's a money grab by the people alleging sexual assault. Like we should be past that, right? They didn't settle because they refused to sign NDAs, and they got to continue paying court costs and take this thing, hopefully for them, to trial if he is indicted. So why have we not moved past those two conversations?
Because we're dumb. I just think we're dumb about this stuff. Like, just generally. Because, and listen, like, at some point it is the responsibility is on each individual to go and do their homework on these kind of things. And I think that responsibility on people like us with microphones in front of our faces is particularly important. But as somebody who is trying to be informed about the situation, I know that I got to call Dan about this stuff. Because I can't get up there and talk about what it is for Deshaun Watson and his situation to have women who are accusing him of these things subpoenaed to give their testimony in front of a damn grand jury. Because I'm not that smart. So I got to call Dan. 615-737-1045. We'll get your phone calls on this coming up next. All I know is the Titans are the only team in the division with a quarterback situation that you can trust. And that guy just threw 3 interceptions in a playoff game. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. All right, so we haven't had any new news in the last, 10 minutes. It's been like this for, 4 days, man. What a week in the NFL, and it's not even really ramped up yet. Free agency. Look how smart the league is. You have Calvin Ridley disgraced and suspended for gambling on games. You have Brian Flores suing the league for racism, allegedly, and hiring practices. So what do you do to distract all of us? You throw some firecrackers and sparklers in the air. The Washington football team is cutting Landon Collins, and Harold Landry gets a new deal, and all of a sudden all of us are moved on. And that's not even the big stuff. 615-737-1045. It's easy to get caught up. That's why they're smart about this stuff. Jason is in Murfreesboro, wants to weigh in on this Thursday. Hello, Jason.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Just had to find out, we were worried about what the Colts are doing or trying to figure out what they're going to do quarterback-wise. And, we've been talking about the Titans and the Texans look like they're a mess. What is going on with the Jaguars? What moves they making to help Trevor Lawrence figure out his role?
You know what they did? Thanks for the call. You're right. We should probably pay attention to the lowly Jags at some point because, now, listen, they're easier to ignore without creepy Uncle Herb lurking around the facility. But the last that I saw of the Jags at this point is they had franchise tagged Cam Robinson, I want to say for the second time, which is weird to me because their offensive line is really, really bad. We know that they're probably going to take an offensive lineman with the first overall selection coming up in this year's draft. But, they franchise tagged Cam Robinson, which if you were going to do that, he primarily plays left tackle. I don't think that keeps them from taking Evan Neal or the NC State kid with the first overall selection, but that move didn't make any sense to me. Now, they've got cap space, so you're really probably not going to see the Jags make any noise until such time as they get out in free agency and they start to spend again because, that's what bad teams do. They stay bad because they overpay for a bunch of players that don't necessarily want to go to Jacksonville, but you offer them so much more than the next closest team that you're basically outbidding yourself at that point. So, the Jags, there's been nothing discernibly done about that football team right now. Although one would assume that they're in better hands because Doug Peterson at least knows how to coach NFL football as opposed to his predecessor in that role, which was, of course, Urban Meyer. Do we have any?
I don't know. I don't want to talk about it.
What was the question?
Doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it.
Just muttering his way through his last days as head coach of the Jacksonville Jags. Do we have any? Is he doing anything? What's he doing right now?
Herb?
Yeah, what's Herb up to?
Probably on a boat with the shirtless guy. I don't know.
Oh, the dude doing bong rips in the back of his his Fox Sports hit or whatever it was. He's on a boat somewhere. Urban Meyer trying to do a television hit or on Colin Cowherd or something like that. There's just some dude you can see some dude in a reflection of a mirror ripping a bong. Outstanding. I miss him. I'm not going to lie. 615-737-1045. You can jump in on this situation if you like. By the way, Harold Landry is going to meet with the media today. He's going to have a press conference at the new facility. I guess they have at least part of the new facility, the new practice facility, opened up at St. Thomas Sports Park. That's going to be at 12:15, so obviously I'm not going to physically be there, but we'll carry that press conference live for you. More phone calls on the other side, and what we will get into a discussion about is now what does the AFC and NFC look like at the quarterback position? We really haven't taken a 1,000-foot view on these transactions, particularly with Russell Wilson going to the Broncos, and does that make them the team to beat? But Lucas is giving me a hand signal that I need to get to Robert in Nashville quickly, so let me go to Robert in Nashville. What you got for me?
Hey, how you doing, sir?
I'm well.
Hey, I wanted to comment on several things. First, the Deshaun Watson thing. Who would want to if 22 women, if he did that to my daughter, I'd be kicking his butt. if I could.
Sure.
You know, I mean, 22 women, that's a lot. And nobody's talking about that. They're just like, oh, hopefully he gets I hope he gets what he deserves.
Oh, no, Robert. I mean, listen, I don't blame you if you don't listen to every second of the show every day. But, like, we had people calling in here saying the Titans needed to trade for him, and I kind of blew a gasket a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And also Carson Wentz, man, what was it, 2018? He was just about in the final running for NFL
MVP, 17.
Player.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah, and then I'll take a quarterback, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Man, I'll take that all day and pair it with Washington's defense if they can get a good middle linebacker like the guy they just let go in Bobby Warner in Seattle.
Bobby Wagner.
Wagner, yeah. That'd be a great defense. So I'm excited about what Washington.
Oh, you just drowned him with the music. That wasn't fair to Robert. He had a bunch of points he wanted to make. You ran out of time for him?
Ran out of time, but we appreciate the call.
We always appreciate the call. Robert, if you hear the music, that means the call has exceeded 60 seconds, and we have to continue to move forward. But some good points made there. Like I said, Carson Wentz didn't get traded exclusively because of what happened on the field. I'm going to read you some details of what Zach Kiefer reported on Carson Wentz, because he seems I don't know how many people follow my buddy Michael Kist, who is he's the podcast guru for SB Nation, so it's probably not many of you. But he's a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and he was, in the same way that Calvin Ridley was tweeting through his year-long suspension, Michael Kist was tweeting through the trade of Carson Wentz yesterday. Because what Kist's analysis in Philadelphia was of Carson Wentz, maybe he's just a bleep hole. That appears to be the case again with a second consecutive NFL franchise. And I'm going to read you some of the details on this from Zach Kiefer coming up next.
It is 11 a.m. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. The Tennessee Titans making moves on this Thursday. Adam Schefter reporting earlier this morning that Titans have cut left guard Rodger Saffold to clear up about $10.5 million in cap space. This comes after the report by Mike Garofalo of NFL Network that the Titans have cut offensive tackle Kendall Lamb, who signed a 2-year deal in 2021 and appeared in 12 games last year. That move clears up over $3 million in cap space. The team also announced they have agreed to a 1-year deal with long snapper Morgan Cox. The Indianapolis Colts, the latest team to be on the market for a new quarterback. Adam Schefter with the report Wednesday. They are trading Carson Wentz to Washington for third-round picks in 2022 and 2023. That 2023 third-rounder can become a second. It is conditional. The teams also swapped second-round picks in 2022. Washington receives a seventh-round pick and will pay the full $28 million of Wentz's salary for the upcoming season. SEC tournament action continues in Tampa today. Florida and Texas A&M tipping off right about now. The winner will play top-seeded Auburn in the quarterfinals. It's Missouri and LSU at 1 p.m. for the right to face Arkansas. Mississippi State and South Carolina going head-to-head at 5 to determine who will face Tennessee in the quarters. And Vanderbilt taking on Alabama after routing Georgia on Wednesday. Tip-off tonight between the Commodores and the Tide is at 7 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome in on this Thursday. Welcome back if you've been hanging with us. Happy to have you guys in for today's show. We're here with you until 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica is making it happen behind the scenes. Got your phone calls if you want to get involved on the NFL transaction discussion. 615-737-1045. Speaking of transactions, Harold Landry going to meet with the Titans media at 12:15. We'll carry that press conference live for you so you can hear from your new 5-year, $87.5 million pass rusher in his own words. He's got to be excited. I'm sure his family's there with him. A very happy day for the Landry family. Rodger Saffold, Kendall Lamb on their way out. About $13 million in savings between the two offensive linemen that the Titans cut earlier today. And that's just the local stuff. There's a bunch, and Morgan Cox re-signed on a 1-year deal, if we're keeping track of all of the transactions. But the NFL has a lot of different stuff that's been flying around all over the place, and none more locally impactful than Carson Wentz. So Carson Wentz gets traded away yesterday to the Washington Commanders. This was in exchange for a pair of third-round picks. According to ESPN, Adam Schefter first reported the deal. The teams will also swap second-round picks this spring, and it cannot be made official until the new league year begins next week on March the 16th. But when you read this article by Zach Kiefer of The Athletic, who did a lot of great reporting in the middle of this, he is alleging that, Carson Wentz was dead and gone in Indianapolis even before the collapse at the end of their season. The final two games that were layups, probably not the best term because it's still an NFL football game, but you understand that they were the better team. They had the postseason on the line, and they blew it. Zach Kiefer writes, as for the Colts, the issues with Wentz stretched back to before the season began, one source said, and over the course of the year, some grew frustrated at what they deemed a lack of leadership, a resistance to hard coaching, and a reckless style of play which had a role in several close losses. He was inconsistent, and the organization just at some point stopped trusting him. When we talk about the trust and the importance of the quarterback position, whatever you think about Ryan Tannehill here in Tennessee, they have never displayed a lack of trust in him, even as your trust in him after that playoff game might have been seriously altered. But we could see it. We could all see it in the way that, I mean, their offense, when you look at how they were playing towards the end of the year, it was almost exclusively Jonathan Taylor. And we talked about the idea, well, if you had to play the one game, the Colts did, without Carson Wentz or without Jonathan Taylor, who would you choose? And the answer almost every time was, yeah, you would do that without the quarterback. That cannot be the case for a professional football team. They didn't trust him, and now they've sent him away before the team that they traded draft picks to for him has even used the draft selection. This Wentz thing, to read it, and again, it's at theathletic.com, the Colts' decision to move on from Carson Wentz after just one season and all the details in it, where now the only guy on your roster is Sam Ehlinger. Ehlinger? Do we have the official pronunciation? Either way. Like, you can blow smoke, or Frank Reich or Chris Ballard or whomever can blow smoke about Sam Ehlinger all they want as to how much they trust him and how much they believe in him and blah, 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 blah. But they've botched the Colts quarterback situation on Wentz. Rivers didn't play long enough for it to matter. They drafted Jacob Eason a couple of years ago out of Washington. He's not even on the roster. It has been a really, really disappointing situation for a franchise that used to be able to consistently conduct business at a high level. And since then, they've been fairly incompetent. It's pretty weird to think about. With the rest of the AFC, Lucas put together a list because this Russell Wilson trade, and something we're going to hear from Greg Cosell about. We did the Install podcast yesterday in the middle of all this news. It's a really great episode. I would invite you to go check it out. Greg, as always, was really, really good on the analysis of these moves. But, Lucas, you put together a list of the quarterbacks who are in the NFC and the AFC right now, and I wonder how much, because it feels to me like there's a seismic shift in the balance of power that has been accruing over the last couple of seasons. Not that Russ is like the end-all be-all in this, but all of a sudden, in the last 3 years, the AFC has become the conference of quarterbacks in a way that I don't know that if I'm just projecting or not. What did you come up with when you did some research?
What do you want first?
What do you have?
AFC or NFC?
Give me the AFC.
Well,
no, wait. Give me the NFC, and I want to see if that is if the contrast is more stark when I've heard the NFC first versus the AFC.
Okay. Let's go down the list, shall we?
Let's.
In the East, Cowboys, Dak. Giants, Daniel Jones report that they may be gunning for Mitch Trubisky. Washington, Wentz. Philly, Jalen Hurts. Bears, Justin Fields. Detroit Lions, Jared Goff. Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers. Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins. The NFC South is where it gets fun. The Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan. The New Orleans Saints, I don't know. The Tampa Bay Bucks, I don't know. Carolina Panthers, I have no idea. And then, of course, the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, the LA Rams, Matt Stafford, and the 49ers, Trey Lance, question mark. The Seahawks, I do not know.
So how many
of question marks?
How many I do not knows do you have on the list?
I've got.
Let's make that easy.
Are we counting the 49ers as a do not know?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got Seahawks, Niners, Panthers, Bucks, Saints. So 5 of them, 3 of them in the same division. I mean, the Falcons are on a fast track to win the NFC South.
Well, and they just gave Matt Ryan a longer deal to bring down his cap hit.
Through 2023.
Because he was on pace to have, I think, the third biggest cap hit. No, the biggest cap hit in football this year, Matt Ryan. I'm pretty sure, prior to the extension. Anyway, what does the AFC look like?
Well, in the East, with the Bills, Josh Allen. With the Dolphins, it's Tua. With the Pats, it's Mac Jones. With the Jets, it's Zach Wilson. With the Ravens, it's Lamar Jackson. The Bengals, Joe Burrow. The Browns, Baker Mayfield. The Steelers, I do not know. The Texans, Davis Mills, question mark. The Colts.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. The Colts, who knows? The Jags, Trevor Lawrence. The Titans, Ryan Tannehill. And then you get to the AFC West, where it's Russell Wilson, Pat Mahomes, Derek Carr, Justin Herbert. One of these things is not like the other.
That AFC West is wild.
It's insane when you just look at all the names together.
Just in a cluster.
It's we were having these conversations about the NFC West to an extent last season, right? With Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford. Jimmy G, not so much. But the AFC West this season, it's across the board.
So there's one like TBD on the AFC side of things, the Colts.
If you're the Steelers are very much a TBD.
Steelers, so two.
So yes, two. And then that's if you're assuming Davis Mills is the starter for the Houston Texans.
I'm assuming Davis Mills is the starter for the Houston Texans.
It's a safe assumption for 2022. Now, the AFC West, Derek Carr is the weak link. And that's a guy who may or may not be about to get a big deal in Las Vegas.
Are the Broncos a Super Bowl contender just because of Russ? We need to talk about this. Cosell gave some really good analysis. We broke down the quarterback moves yesterday. We talked about Wentz to the Commanders. We talked about what this may mean for the Titans moving forward and some really, really good stuff on Bud Dupree and Harold Landry. Been a lot of edge defender talk lately. I'm starting to mix up the names. We'll do that next with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So, in typical sports talk radio fashion, I have a list. I have a list of quarterbacks. This is highly sensitive, highly classified information that I'm about to share with you, mostly because it's not my list. I try not to do this to Greg Cosell too often, but every once in a while, I can back Greg into a sports talk radio corner and be like, hey, Greg, rank the quarterbacks for me. And sometimes it takes one of the biggest trades in NFL history for me to be able to have that conversation with Greg, because a lot of times he'll try to brush me off like I'm a gnat buzzing around him, asking him for takes, when Greg doesn't want to give me takes. He wants to break down film. That's why we like Greg. But yesterday, and every Wednesday, by the way, we even through the offseason, we are doing the Install podcast. So great expert opinion and analysis from Cosell and myself as we kind of walk you through the NFL and what coaches talk about as it relates to this kind of thing. So in discussing the biggest news of yesterday on the podcast, Russell Wilson obviously came up. Now, he's not Aaron Rodgers, which would probably have been the Broncos' team or quarterback, rather, of choice. Because almost as soon as Rodgers announced that he was staying put, it seems like the Broncos got the deal done with Seattle to bring Russ to Denver. And so you're looking now at an AFC West that includes Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr being the least talented of the four quarterbacks, who's still a pretty damn good quarterback. And so when I asked Greg about how these guys, this is about to be a bloodbath in that division, trying to find playoff spots and wild card spots. And by the way, Titans have all four of those teams this coming season. So in discussing that, I asked Greg how he kind of viewed those four quarterbacks, and this is what he had to say.
You have Mahomes, you have Herbert, you have Wilson, and you have Carr. I imagine there'd be different views. I mean, I would go with Mahomes.
Yeah.
I'd probably go Herbert, and then I'd probably go with Wilson.
Okay. And we've talked a lot about Herbert.
We didn't just so people know, we didn't discuss this before. We came on and did our
oh no, podcast, I put him on the spot. I put Greg in a corner because I know that's the only way to get him to do lists, sports talk radio.
Exactly. So,
well, now, and Greg, we've talked a lot about Herbert, and obviously the traits are fantastic, and they've really seemed to kind of learn how to play to his skill set as well. The Chargers, what they're able to do around him this offseason is going to be interesting. What I guess about him at this stage in his career, do you put him above somebody who's been a hugely talented player in the NFL?
Well, I think first of all, I think he's just more physically gifted. Sure. Don't forget, Herbert's 6'6", 240 pounds.
He's a giant human.
He's a big man. I've been around him, and he throws the ball so incredibly easily. He does have excellent mobility. I think he's just a more physically gifted player than Russell Wilson, who, by the way, has obviously had a great career up to this point. The thing about making lists is people automatically assume that someone who's lower on a list, it means you don't like them. That's not the way it works. When you make a list, you have to make a list. I thought the Chargers did a really good move by re-signing Mike Williams, because they don't really have that kind of receiver other than Mike Williams. As good as Keenan Allen is, Mike Williams is a true boundary X. Yeah. He's the single receiver to the short side of the field. He can win one-on-one. He can make contested catches. He can get vertical. That kind of receiver is really important to that offense, really to any offense. And by re-signing him, I think it was a 3-year, $60 million deal, if I remember seeing the numbers correctly. I thought that was a good move, because without him, I think they would have had a little bit of an issue with who they line up at receiver. Now, they really like Josh Palmer, who well coming out of UT, and I really liked his tape coming out of UT as well. I watched that in detail. I remember he had some really good reps against Patrick Surtain against Alabama, and they like him as well. But now they can look at Keenan Allen, Palmer, and Mike Williams, and that's a pretty good trio of receivers right there.
The division is going to be. So that's Greg Cosell. I don't need to hear me talk anymore. Thank you very much, Lucas. That's Greg Cosell's analysis of the AFC West and why he believes that Herbert is in a better situation. And, if you're just going purely off of picking the quarterbacks, Herbert would be above Wilson. But does this make Denver, like, do we immediately put Denver in the conversation as Super Bowl contender? Because Russell Wilson has kind of been all over the place in the last couple of years. He was a top 5 quarterback in 2020, coming into the 2020 season, because we had seen basically from 2012 to 2019, and Ben Solak at The Ringer wrote a great piece about this, but basically for a 7-year span, we had seen Russell Wilson be one of the most efficient players at the quarterback position in an offense that was married to run first. So then we started, right, what became the trendy thing to say? Let Russ cook. That was a whole thing. It was a whole 2-year movement, for lack of a better term. And so in letting Russ cook, basically the idea was to let the elite quarterback play the way that the elite quarterback wants to play. So you saw a little more variance in what Russell was doing that maybe didn't make him top 5 anymore. Like he started to operate a little bit more out of structure. Mark Jones on the YouTube chat, where you can interact with the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Mark Jones says, Mr. Limited? Get it? Not even a smirk, Lucas?
You got a little smirk.
No, people can't see the smirk, though. Do you enjoy letting me hang out to dry like that when I try out a joke from the YouTube chat?
Sometimes.
And it just sits there?
What do you want me to do? Roar with laughter?
It would help. I don't know. I don't know what comedically plays better.
I'll let Mac do it.
That would help. This is not like a play-by-play situation where the silence helps. If there's no ambient noise around me that's just letting the joke sit there like a dead fish, all it does is make me turn red in the face until such time as I can try and, throw it back to you.
It's called laying out. It's a broadcast term.
I'm not very good at laying out.
Doesn't really apply here.
The silence makes me deeply uncomfortable. But when you look at what Russell Wilson is at this point, I mean, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to change the way that you play to a degree. Broncos are no longer in the Vic Fangio mold of NFL offense. And understanding that Vic Fangio was a defensive coordinator primarily, but you understood that the Broncos were going to, much like the Titans, run the football and play great defense. That was going to be their MO. Titans do it with a more talented collection of skill position players, although Denver's got some pieces to play with. We talked about this yesterday, Greg and I, about the marriage of Russell Wilson and the new Denver Broncos head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, who was formerly the offensive coordinator of the Green Bay Packers. That's why the connection between Aaron Rodgers and Denver made sense to a ton of people, and I'm sure to Denver. And this is what Greg had to say about how the Broncos are going to have to adapt their style of play because of the dude that they just traded for.
Obviously, they gave up a lot. It's Nathaniel Hackett is now the head coach.
Right.
And obviously, when you make a trade like that, you do your due diligence, because Russell Wilson's been in the league for a long time, Buck. He plays a certain way.
Yeah.
You have to understand that he's not likely to change the way in which he plays. So I'm very curious to see what this offense looks like, because Nathaniel Hackett kind of comes from the Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan school, where the run game is the starting point, and much of what you do in the pass game works off your run game. We'll see if Nathaniel Hackett, now that he has Russell Wilson, clearly Russell Wilson was in that style offense pretty much his entire career, right. But I think the sense is that he didn't really want to play that way, that he feels he wants to play, more like, let's say, the Tom Brady type, where he's in command of everything that's happening and you throw the ball more. Now, I don't know that for a fact. I don't know Russell Wilson personally, but I'm very curious to see what the mix is, what the mesh is, because as I said, you don't make that trade without researching and understanding how Russell Wilson sees all this, because he is a veteran quarterback and he is due a conversation and a discussion about what kind of offense you're going to run, and you have to feel very comfortable that what you do and what he likes to do and wants to do, that there is a mesh there.
It seems to be the case, at least in recent memory, with coaches and quarterbacks collaborating a little more in that way, Greg. And if Russell Wilson is wanting to throw the ball more, I mean, you could do worse than Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler. They've got they just traded away one of their better tight ends, but they still have tight ends.
They have Albert O, who's not a bad tight end.
Yeah,
I'm sure you remember him from the SEC in Missouri. Yeah. He was a good prospect coming out. But no, you're right, because I remember, talking to a number of coaches when Peyton Manning went to Denver later in his career. And obviously Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning are different kinds of quarterbacks, but people said, and they weren't joking when they said it. They said, hey, at this point in Peyton's career, you're basically running his offense if you're the coordinator. Now, maybe that's extreme, but, obviously you have to understand that Russell Wilson at this point in his career is likely to have a meaningful say in what the offense looks like. And you have to know that as a coach before you make the trade.
That's Greg Cosell talking about the Broncos acquisition of Russell Wilson. It's kind of interesting to see some of the numbers for Russell over the last couple of years, because his accuracy, and this really hasn't been a part of the conversation, but his accuracy on deep passes has gone down substantially when you kind of look at the numbers as far as how often he's passing deep and how effective he's been as far as expected points added per play. When you hear people talk about EPA per play, I'm not gonna bury you in analytics terminology, but there is a substantial drop off, especially as the season goes on. Remember, we used to have this kind of conversation around Drew Brees, and Brees obviously much advanced in age over Russell Wilson, but Russ is starting to get into his 30s at this point. He has seen a drop off of 0.544 expected points added per play to negative 1.5 expected points added per play on deep passes. Now, he's not doing it a ton, but his accuracy, his on-target rate, has gone from 61.8% to 40%. So he's not playing the position as efficiently as I think a lot of people associate the name Russell Wilson with. So when we pose the question, do you think that the Denver Broncos are now immediately made a Super Bowl contender? I'm not going to be able to tell you that they're not. You've upgraded the quarterback position. They've gotten substantially better. Russell Wilson is better than Teddy Bridgewater. He is better than Drew Lock. And this now gives them the opportunity to at least compete in a division that they were getting drowned out before. What did you tell me yesterday, Lucas? 11 different quarterbacks since Peyton Manning retired?
Yes. And we forgot that one of them was a practice squad wide receiver as we were naming them off.
What was that guy's name?
I cannot remember, but he started against the Saints in 2020 where they lost half their roster because of COVID.
That guy needs to be memorialized in some way. I wonder, is he still even in the league?
I'm going to find out.
I forgot about the wide receiver. I felt so bad for that. Yeah,
Mickey Ryan texted me during that segment yesterday. He said, don't forget about the wide receiver.
So, in kind of diagnosing this, because basically until free agency, teams are going to reload, teams are going to re-up, players, you're going to see guys changing places, you're going to see, free agency grades and things of that nature that are, of course, impossible to do with any kind of on any kind of factual basis, because we don't know how all the parts and pieces are going to fit together just yet. But like pre-free agency, when you're kind of talking about the AFC, right? We went through all the different teams and all the different quarterbacks that are going to make this a hugely competitive conference for years to come, understanding that of all the teams in the AFC, the Titans still maintain the easiest path to the postseason. AFC South, clown show, bro. You may well, just by virtue of having semi-consistent quarterback play, even if you're not willing to give Ryan Tannehill consistent quarterback play, which I think is a low bar, and I would be willing to give him. By the way, I think Ryan Tannehill Ryan Tannehill has just become infinitely more valuable to a team like the Titans because of the nature of what else is around them in the AFC South, whether you like that or not. But I struggle to find 3 teams pre-free agency that are discernibly pre-free agency and draft, important to note, that are discernibly better than the Tennessee Titans right now. I would still consider them to be a top 5, if not top 4 team in the conference. Because if you're going to make the case for any of them, you're saying the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. You're saying the Bills with Josh Allen. And if you could make the argument easily because Russell Wilson is a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. You can make an argument for the Broncos even as they did lose some critical pieces on that defense. Well, really, one critical piece on that defense. Shelby Harris, who was a good defensive lineman for them, and in losing one of their tight ends, Noah Fant, from a couple of years ago out of Iowa. So 3 teams, Chiefs, Broncos, Bills, 2 of them in the AFC West, who you would sit here and say, yeah, they have a better chance as a team to win a Super Bowl. Whereas the strength of the other 3 that we've just discussed, that would be the quarterback. For the Tennessee Titans, they're working counterculture. They're getting ready to hold a press conference in about 45 minutes from now for a player that they just gave $87.5 million to because they're saying, as every other team looks to maximize offensive efficiency, they're saying we're just going to maul your offensive efficiency. We're going to make your life a living hell. They did it to Patrick Mahomes in that game here in Nashville not so long ago. They did it less effectively to Josh Allen because Josh Allen may well be one of the most unstoppable things in the sport, but when it mattered the most, they did have the goal line stop, literal stop of him. So as Russell Wilson has probably seen the peak of his powers, I think we're past the let Russ cook era. I'm not saying that he can't continue to play the position at a high level, but, the numbers are starting to see a significant decrease in some of what makes him special, unless he adjusts his style of play. So if you are going to take advantage of all these other teams who are loading up on offense around you, not to say that you shouldn't, but you've equipped your football team to go out there and to handle Mahomes, Allen, Wilson, Lamar, Burrow, Herbert, Derek Carr, on and on and on it goes. Because that, I think, is going to differentiate the Tennessee Titans between this and the rest of their potential AFC playoff competition. Now, these are all prognostications that are way ahead of the season, way ahead of the playoffs. We haven't even really entered the silly season portion of this where we all freak out about free agent signings and $100 million deals, and in the case of Aaron Rodgers, $200 million deals. But I do think that there's just an assumption that Russell Wilson is going to come to the AFC West and succeed at a high level, be in a better position than he was in Seattle. And I think some of the problems that Seattle was having, not enough of it is being attributed to Russell Wilson and where you've kind of seen a drop-off on his play. And at the same time, an allowance from the coaching staff to do things more his way. That's not always the best thing when you're talking about a super structured sport like professional football. When we come back, we haven't talked about the SEC tournament at all. We need to talk about some college basketball because not only did Vanderbilt wipe the floor with Georgia last night, there are some fun games coming up. In fact, we'll learn Tennessee's opponent tonight between Mississippi State and South Carolina. So we'll do some college hoops coming up next, and then we'll get back in to the Titans and clearing cap space and what needs to be done, as well as Harold Landry's press conference at 12:15. Stay right there. It's 104.5 The Zone. Let's do some SEC hoops talk since the tournament's on. We've had our fill of, well, we haven't had our fill of football for the day. We're not done with football entirely, or at least football. It's
not done with us.
That's what I was going to say. Like, we could be done with football, and then, Aaron Rodgers returning home. I'm still so angry about that. What a waste of time. I mean, listen, we were going to have to find something else to talk about if Aaron Rodgers didn't make a whole mess throughout the course of the offseason to give us things to talk about. But, like, I think about the amount of breath that I've wasted saying that name on a guy who is almost next to zero relevance for the team that I cover and the market that I work in. But right now, if you're keeping track of SEC hoops, it is about over in the first half between Texas A&M and Florida, 33-25. A&M leading the Gators right now as the 8 and 9 seed matchup in the SEC tournament in Tampa Bay. Just keeping track of this thing right now. So we'll find out tonight, who Tennessee plays tomorrow. And we're going to have a lot of great coverage of the SEC tournament tomorrow. Ron Slay is going to be, I don't know is he physically going to be in here with us? Because at that point, I'm going to have to ask him to keep his clothes on.
I do not know yet if Slay, I don't know if Slay knows yet whether or not he will be physically in here with us.
Okay. Well, Slay is going to be here tomorrow as we talk SEC hoops. But the tournament at this point is very interesting because, what's the matchup that everybody wants to see? Like, just on a surface level, I think everybody would prefer to see Auburn and Kentucky squaring off in the SEC title game this year, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Everybody would have their differing opinions on it, but sure. Yeah, I mean, that's the two best front courts, arguably in America, going head-to-head in a conference championship.
Kentucky, though, night and day. I mean, Oscar Tshiebwe is still a tremendous player, but they are substantially different without Ty Washington.
Yeah.
Like, when you watch them play, it has a noticeable impact on their offensive and their defensive efficiency, frankly. But just kind of looking at the bracket right now, you've got A&M and Florida playing at this point. LSU and Missouri, 2 p.m. tip on SEC Network. No, that would be a 1 p.m. tip, right? I think I'm reading these times in Eastern time. South Carolina, Mississippi State, and then Vanderbilt, after just doing work against a lifeless Georgia team. Were you made at all to feel sad for Tom Crean? Because there was a part of me, I never have sympathy for that man. And it's not fair. It's not fair. Tom Crean has never done anything to me that would personally offend me other than, having a little spat about revoking my student credential while I was in college as he was the Indiana head coach. Like, other than that, I got no real problem with Tom Crean. But I watched them just be able to do absolutely nothing. And Scottie Pippen Jr. just rolling over their heads for a full basketball game. They smothered Georgia last night.
It was over from the get-go.
There was nothing. And I wanted to stay with the game as long as possible, just to kind of, because I knew we were going to talk about it today. And obviously Vanderbilt's local, and I like to see Scottie Pippen Jr. succeed. And really, I mean, he didn't have one of his big nights. He only ended up with 14. I think he was 6 of 12.
Well, he only needed to play 23 minutes.
Right. They didn't need him.
And that's good news for Vanderbilt to score 86 with Scottie Pippen Jr. scoring 14.
Well, when we had Jerry Stackhouse on the show a couple of weeks ago, right, the whole conversation is you guys continue to need to lean on Scottie Pippen Jr., and he has been able to consistently deliver. That statistically, that does wonders for Scottie because he can do that. But you don't want to have to lean on one player night in and night out the way that they had to do throughout really the course of conference play in the regular season.
I picked them to beat Alabama last night when Will and I did the UT podcast, kind of made our SEC tournament picks. If they can get any kind of secondary scoring tonight against Bama, a team that's been really streaky lately, and Vanderbilt probably should have beaten Alabama last time they met. Vanderbilt should have beaten a lot of teams they played late season. Vanderbilt could very well knock off Alabama and Tampa tonight.
Vanderbilt, we've talked about Vanderbilt, not a ton, but the losses that they've had have been heartbreakers, right? Because they feel they've had opportunities to win those games at the end, and then something goes wrong, or somebody misses a free throw in the final seconds, and it snowballs on them, and with less than a minute to play. Like we've seen that story play out a couple of different times for Vandy. But right now, Alabama's a 5.5-point favorite, neutral court there in Tampa over the Commodores. That game will take place tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network. And again, Tennessee not playing until the quarterfinal as the 2 seed in the tournament right now. I mean, the questions that need to be answered about the University of Tennessee, and we'll get into this tomorrow at greater length. We'll break down the game and the matchup in greater detail once we know the opponent. But can they win the way that they've been able to win on a neutral court? Can they take what they've been able to do at home throughout the course of the season, is the more efficient way for me to say this, and translate it to a neutral court? Can they finish games in a big spot and do something substantial? Because, I mean, the regular season, the sharing of the regular season SEC title a couple of years ago with Auburn, like that felt like an achievement for Rick Barnes and an achievement for this era of Tennessee basketball.
Well, and that was in a season where they were picked to finish 12th.
Oh, no, they were
in
picked.
The SEC.
I remember being it because they had the SEC Media Days, SEC Hoops Media Days at the Omni. I went to that. This was a couple of years ago. That had to have been like 2018, right? And if you want to jump in, by the way, 615-737-1045, your phone calls are welcome. That season felt like, okay, Tennessee under Rick Barnes has arrived. They've started to make a name for themselves. We understand the brand. We understand the identity. We understand the style of play that they're going to bring to the table. Now, let's see how they're able to build off that momentum after they kind of, sputtered around in Rick Barnes' first couple of seasons. And now, I think I think the expectation should be for them to be able to be in the same conversation as Auburn and as Kentucky as a team that is capable of winning the SEC tournament this year. Is that not unfair?
Any of the top 4 seeds can win the SEC tournament this year. And I think you could make an argument that Arkansas could be the most poised to do it, because I think you could argue they have the best balance of backcourt and frontcourt out of those top 4 with J.D. Note and Jalen Williams.
And Arkansas, by the way, if you didn't know, is the 4 seed. So yes, you have Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas as the top 4 seeds in the SEC tournament right now.
You can make an argument for any of those 4.
I think so. Because you've seen really, really competitive games. And Tennessee, surviving Arkansas at home most recently this past Saturday when they held them down for basically 3/4 of that basketball game, and then Arkansas was able to rally, get back into that game, and Tennessee also allowed them some opportunities to get back into that game. 615-737-1045. Leo is in Franklin, wants to chime in on some college hoops. Hello, Leo.
Yeah, Buck, I just thought you'd be interested knowing last night for about 10 minutes on Wikipedia, it says that your buddy Crean, I think it was funny because, things just come up for a minute and then somebody sanitizes it.
Sure.
But last night about 10:30, it said Thomas Aaron Crean is the worst head coach in the University of Georgia men's basketball team has ever had.
Oh.
And I thought it was funny that it got through on Wikipedia, and it was hilarious. And I thought about you because, his Indiana days as well. So I thought, well, there you go. Where does he land next? What happens with him?
Honestly, Leo, he was so good at television a couple of years ago. Like, here's the thing that I think, and I appreciate the call, Leo. I love that bad things happen to Tom Crean and people think of me. That gives me some kind of gratification in my life after the Tom Crean experience. But this is like, it's a bit of a joke. Like, I don't really hate Tom Crean. The thing that I like about Tom Crean is that he loves to coach. He loves the process of explaining basketball to you. And it's everything else. Like at a school like in Georgia, there's less expectations for stuff like this. But at a school like Indiana, like it's akin to being the head coach of Texas football, right? Without the budget. Texas football, you got to go to the governor's house for his birthday because you got to do photo ops as the head coach of the Texas Longhorns. Like people forget all these other little things that go into the life of college coaches, football, basketball, power sports, right? Where you're shuffled along as some kind of prop for more than just the thing that you're there to do the job, right? You're there to coach. Tom Crean, I think, is a good coach because he understands basketball on a granular level, and he does a great job explaining it to you. So I think, honestly, if Tom doesn't need this stress in his life anymore, which of course he does because he, like every other coach that you've ever been around, is an insane person. I think he'd be great to have back on television because I think he did a really, really good job. I think that was directly after he left Indiana or after Indiana and Tom Crean agreed to part ways. Yeah, I don't know where he lands next. And he's not the worst coach in the history of Georgia basketball. Georgia has had some bad basketball teams. Troy is in Tampa Bay. Oh, is perhaps down there for the SEC tournament. What's going on, Troy?
Hey, man, what's going on? I'm not in Tampa Bay, but I'm an SEC fan. So I want to know why and how did Tampa get the SEC tournament? It makes no sense. So any justification of that?
Yeah, I was looking this up for myself. Thank you for the call, Troy. 615-737-1045. I couldn't find a good explanation as to why the SEC tournament was taken, because they did this a couple of years ago with St. Louis, where it was just in St. Louis for an odd year, and then it came back to Nashville.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the first shows I did was in Bridgestone Arena post-pandemic for the SEC basketball tournament last year.
Yeah, yep. I remember.
But as far as, it's going to have a massive economic impact because Amalie, I think is how you pronounce it, Amalie Arena, that's where the Lightning play. It's right downtown. I've actually been there. I could not find a good explanation for why there's these one-year one-offs in odd locations. Like, I don't know the nature of the SEC's contracts with these cities, but perhaps we'll be able to find more information. I'm sorry that doesn't answer the question. Perhaps I'll be able to find more information for you during the commercial break.
It doesn't make sense. And I'm looking at, they just kind of did a shot of the crowd before cutting to break here as Florida is down.
There's nobody there.
There's nobody there. I mean, Florida hardly has a home court advantage there in their home state. By the way, if Mike White loses to A&M, one and done in their home state in the SEC tournament, that's a fireable offense in my mind, the way that tenure has gone.
Turns out his brother is a better athletic director than he is a basketball coach, which is fortunate, hugely fortunate for the University of Tennessee.
But yeah, it doesn't make sense. The environment's going to suffer. Kentucky fans will show up. There will be some Tennessee fans there, but not like it would be here in Nashville. It sucks.
All right, so I have an article from the Tampa Bay Sports Commission. This is back in 2014. Tampa Bay lands the 2022 SEC men's basketball tournament. It was awarded to them, and the Tampa Bay Times-Forum back in 2014, this was when Mike Slive was still the commissioner of the SEC. The second time Tampa Bay will host the SEC men's basketball tournament because they've done it before back in 2009. But it doesn't give a specific reason as to why Tampa was awarded that back in 2014. But this is from TampaBaySports.org. An article from 8 years ago as to when this stuff was decided. I mean, this is like when college football, you have like future opponents, like you get the, what's a good example? Like Notre Dame and USC home and home series for, 17 years down the line or whatever, or like Notre Dame or like Tennessee is going to add a game against Pittsburgh, but that's decided that 5 or 6 years ago under different coaching staffs and different athletic director regime. So no great explanation other than this was decided many, many years ago. All right, when we come back, we're going to get back into the latest with the Tennessee Titans roster cuts and Harold Landry's press conference. We're going to carry it live for you at 12:15. Stay right there. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:04. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking Titans news earlier this morning. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported that the Titans have cut left guard Rodger Saffold, the 2021 Pro Bowler. Cutting him will save over $10.5 million in cap space for this season. The Titans have also cut offensive tackle Kendall Lamb, according to a report by Mike Garofalo of NFL Network. Lamb signed a 2-year deal in 2021. That move will clear up over $3 million in cap space. Also, the team announced earlier today they have agreed to terms for a 1-year deal with long snapper Morgan Cox. Breaking news from Drake Hills of the Tennessee and Nashville SC's new stadium has a new name. It will be called Geodis Park. The club will officially announce the new name sometime later today. The stadium will open up on May 1st for the home opener as Nashville SC hosts Philadelphia Union. SEC tournament action continuing on today. Florida and Texas A&M in progress early in the second half down in Tampa. A&M on top 35-25. The winner of this game will face top-seeded Auburn in the quarterfinals. Missouri and LSU coming up at 1 p.m. for the right to face Arkansas. Then it's Mississippi State and South Carolina tipping off at 5 to determine who will play Tennessee in the quarterfinals. Vanderbilt will take on Alabama after routing Georgia on Wednesday. Tip-off tonight between the Commodores and the Tide is at 7 p.m. You can catch all the SEC tournament action during the day on the 104.5 The Zone app and 104.5thezone.com. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour underway. Welcome in, welcome back, wherever you are or wherever you've been hanging out before this. We're happy to have you here now. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. We got Harold Landry's press conference we're going to carry for you live in just about 10 minutes, so stay right there. 615-737-1045, that's the number if you want to jump in the meantime, to discuss some of the moves that the Tennessee Titans have already made. And honestly, I want to know where you'd go next. Which player of the players remaining that make the most financial sense would you want them to clear as a cap casualty? Seems a bit cold. We understand. There are plenty of guys who have given good time and good snaps to the Tennessee Titans as a part of the football team. So to discuss them so transactionally feels, a bit devoid of emotion, but such is the nature of football. And, this is how you advance and move forward and try and get better as a football team. So, just to recap, if you've not been familiar with the news or you haven't seen what's happened today specifically, early this morning, Kendall Lamb, the veteran offensive lineman that was brought in last year in free agency, he was released to save about $3 million on the books. So, Kendall Lamb out. Rodger Saffold about, 10 minutes before our show started, Lucas. The Titans released Rodger Saffold, clearing $10.5 million in salary cap space. So you're looking at about, nearly $14 million right out the gate to get you cap compliant. Between those two deals and Harold Landry, the situation has now the Titans with $4 million in change of salary cap space, whereas they had previously been over the cap by about $7 million. So 1 new deal on the books, 2 off the books, gets you cap compliant ahead of next week's free agency, and more moves yet to be done because they need to address their offensive line. Well, they need to address the offense in general, but the offensive line now going through a significant retooling. For Rodger Saffold, a lot of people have become emotionally attached to Rodger. Truly, personally, I enjoy working with Rodger very, very much, and I know he did great work with 3HL as a part of their, what's it called, Football Feast that they do at Buffalo Wild Wings during the football season. He always was very, very honest and transparent, and I thought that he was a good resource for Titans fans to have to discuss what was generally going on with the football team, right? Veterans typically are. Delaney Walker, Wesley Woodyard, Logan Ryan, Rodger Saffold, these guys have really been able to, you feel like you're actually getting transparency from players when a lot of football players will just say things to say things and get the media availability over with, which is much of what I expect from Harold about 5 minutes from now. But this becomes a really interesting conversation because not only are there ways to address this in the draft, but there's a couple of internal candidates to slot in at the left guard position. And I'll tell you which one makes the most sense to fill in immediately at left guard. But first, we're going to hear from Harold Landry. We're going to carry his press conference live right here for you. That'll be at 12:15. So we'll go to break now. Harold on the other side. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Now, a TSSAA scoreboard update on 104.5 The Zone.
Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. 1A girls action underway in Murfreesboro. Wayne County leads Cloudland 35-18 late third quarter. The winner will move on to face Dresden in the 1A semifinals. Next game up, a 1:15 tip between Clay County and Gleason in the 1A girls bracket. Designated drivers are the real MVP. If you've been drinking, pass your keys to a sober friend. The Tennessee Highway Safety Office reminds you that fans don't let fans drive drunk.
Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. We anxiously await Harold Landry, who I'm sure is not anxious to get in front of the media based on my usual dealings with him. But he is going to meet with the assembled Titans media at the new practice facility that is not quite finished renovating, but looks very nice based on the tweets that we've seen. So we will let you know when Harold's at the podium, and we'll carry that live for you momentarily. Before we get into that, because I want to have a conversation about Harold and Bud Dupree, Lucas gave us some really interesting numbers that I think are worth bringing back about how much one helps the other and how much the two operate within the defense. But while we are waiting for Harold to get to the podium, Lucas, the new Nashville SC Stadium, it looks like they've taken a bunch of people on a tour today that are currently tweeting out videos and pictures. You've got the new stadium name, Geodis. Am I saying that properly?
Geodis Park.
Geodis Park.
That's the pronunciation.
I like Park. See, Nissan Stadium was cool or cooler when it was Adelphia Coliseum, right? Coliseum and Park are the preferred descriptors. Now, Geodis. What is that? What is this company? I've never heard of them before. Respectfully. Unless they want to spend money on us.
Right.
Then we'll take your money. The Buck Reising Show will be happy to be presented by Geodis, whatever the hell you are.
Well, we're big supporters of Geodis on the Buck Reising Show.
Oh, sure.
An international logistics and transport company based out of France.
But has headquarters here in Tennessee, yes?
I believe so.
North American headquarters in Brentwood. So, if anybody in the Brentwood office is listening, we would happily be presented by Geodis Logistics, as is the new Nashville SC Park, as opposed to stadium.
The park, looks phenomenal.
I'm very excited about this. Are you like working the first game?
So,
Oh, you don't know yet. You're conflicted.
I will be out of town at a wedding. I know, and I'm not thrilled about it.
Oh,
but
no.
I will be at a wedding that I've been committed to for a very long time on May 1st, but I will be getting into that building the first chance I get on their second home game.
I commit to things that I don't show up to all the time. I'm a notorious flaker. I think that's okay. This is important.
This is important.
This is the first home game in club history. This is the thing you've been working for.
In the new stadium. But it's going to be a rocking environment. Philadelphia Union, the team that knocked Nashville out of the playoffs via penalty kicks in the Eastern Conference semifinals last season, will be coming to town. Yeah, no, it's going to be quite a sight. I mean, it looks fantastic. Really, the progress that they made is unbelievable. They're so ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and so they have the turf down officially now. Well, it's grass, but they have the grass down now officially, and the pictures and the images that are being put out on social media look fantastic. Harold Landry is at the podium. Let's go live to STSP.
I'm just feeling so blessed and grateful and thankful, for the life that I get to live and experience with the awesome family that I have. I'm just so thankful, that this organization, has the faith and trust in me, to get this deal done and to lock me in for the future here. It's just an awesome feeling.
Obviously, the security is something that you wanted, but how important was it for you to stay intact, with the other guys on that front, being as though how well you guys played together?
Oh, yeah, no, it's awesome. We was just talking about it. It's just awesome, man, because, the football part plays a big factor in it, obviously. But it's just the people here, man. It's just so awesome. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to come back here, is just because, when I walk into that locker room, it's not just guys that I work with, it's like best friends, you know what I'm saying? And to be able to go to stay here and be able to continue my career here and going out on that field with them and going to work with them, it's just awesome. And I'm, just extremely thankful, to be able to come back and keep grinding with them.
In the movie, I remember Moneyball, they said it's not always what the money is, but what the money says and says about you. How important is what this money says about you and your career?
Yeah, no, I just feel like, I've said it before, I pride myself on being, that versatile guy, the guy that, these coaches can play me wherever and I'll find a way to be productive. And, I feel like that's the player I am. And I just feel like, this contract says that, that they believe in me and they feel the same way. And like I said, man, I'm just extremely grateful and thankful, for all of this. There's a lot going on in this world, and for this to be happening right now in my life, I'm just so thankful. You know what I'm saying?
With you back kind of in the fold, what do you think is the next step for this front four that you guys have? How much room for growth do you think you guys have?
There's always room for improvement. Literally, I just said it, for me personally, I'm picking one or two things that I know I can improve on going into this offseason, while also enhancing things that I know I do well. And, I'm sure the coaches are already working on it, and I know for a fact, that we're going to go over the things that we did well, but also mainly the things that we know that we can improve on to take this group to the next level. And, I'm excited for that. I'm excited to come back and get back to work and being able to take that next step as a group.
Versatility and all that the Titans have asked you to do with being able to drop and rush from so many different positions. Do you feel like a defense like this is one that is maybe built well to maximize what you can do?
Yeah, no, I feel like the coaches do a great job of putting all of us in positions to succeed. I feel like the coaches, they have a great understanding for everybody's skill set on this defense, and, I feel like they maximize our skill sets. But, yeah, no, I just feel like I'm a guy that can play in any defense, you know what I'm saying? We can line it up and play a normal defense, and I can go make plays, or, we can do some multiple things. So we'll see.
What was your feeling like here when you first got here, I guess 4 years ago, just how you wanted things to unfold, and have they kind of unfolded like you had hoped, or maybe even better?
Yeah, no, I feel like these past 4 years, they've been amazing, to be honest, if you look at the big scheme of things. Obviously, there's ups and downs. You play this game long enough, you're going to experience all type of emotions and just a whole bunch of different things in your career. And I feel like I've experienced a lot in my 4 years here, and it's done nothing but take me to the next level and kind of just make me a better player for it. But these past few years have been awesome. I feel like I've grown so much as a player and as a man, to be honest, in these last 4 years. But yeah.
What are some ways you feel like you have truly grown over the last 4 years? You mentioned as a man, so I guess, how have you grown as a man and also as a football player?
I would say just like in life, I feel like when I first got here, I used to take things like so serious. And like now I'm just kind of like I take things just like, I would just say I still take things serious, but at the same time, it's like I enjoy life. You know what I'm saying? Like I have to take a step back and just realize like how blessed I am. The family that I have, the 2 kids, Grayson and Ollie, and my amazing wife Danielle. Coming into this league, my first year in the league, I used to always just be so hard on myself. But now I'm just like seeing full picture of just like how blessed I am with the people that I have in my life and the experiences that I get to experience. It's just awesome. And then as a player, like I've just grown so much, like run game, pass game, hands, setting the edge, coverage, and pretty much honestly too from a mental standpoint, just like understanding situations. That's something that Braves does a great job of teaching us. And I feel like that's something that I've grown in over the years. Like the game has just slowed down for me. I'm seeing formations easier that the offense come out in, which triggers like something in my head saying, "Oh, this is a pass or this is a run," just stuff like that.
Nashville before you came? You maybe came on a visit here, but before you played here, did you spend much time here? And what's it been like living here? How much does the city maybe embrace you, and how happy are you that you don't have to pack up and go somewhere else?
I never came here before my pre-draft visit. But yeah, it's been awesome living here. Like I've said before, that's also one of the main reasons why I wanted to come back here. My family loves living here, and I love living here and love playing here. But yeah, it's been awesome. Where we live at on Old Hickory Lake in Mount Juliet is awesome living out there. But I would say the biggest thing is just the people. Like the people here are awesome. They've embraced me ever since I got drafted, stuck with me through the ups and downs. And I just feel like it's the people here that make this place awesome.
Has it been lost since
you expect to be back?
To be honest, all the talks that I had with my agent, shout out Tommy Condon, CA, best agent in the game. But just talking with him, I was confident, that I wasn't going to leave Nashville. Like, regardless of the tag or anything, like, not because, I knew what was coming or anything like that. It's just I knew how much I loved being here, and I knew that I was going to do whatever I had to do to make sure that, that I came back here. I really wasn't thinking about it after the loss to Cincy, but when things started heating up, I just knew deep down that this is where I wanted to be.
Said, how much of a weight do you feel is lifted off your shoulders now that this deal is done? You can kind of move on from that.
I don't know. It's just it's nice for sure to have this locked in and down, and now it's all about ball, just focusing on ball and improving my craft this offseason, and I don't got to worry about that. But it is nice having it done.
That's Harold Landry. He's going to continue to talk to the media, but I think you get the gist. So congrats to Harold. He is Alonzo Wright writes in the YouTube chat another hashtag wealthy Williamsoner. What? Mount Juliet's not in Williams County.
That would be Wilson County.
Oh, so Hendersonville also.
Well,
No.
he said Mount Juliet, right?
Okay.
Hendersonville, Sumner County.
We can't do
We'll do this. The geography bee is coming up in a couple.
We got to
months.
do the geography bee again.
Yes, clearly you need to work on your counties. That'll be the focus.
You know how much I hate that damn thing? I hate the Tennessee geography bee. We're gonna publicly shame me again this summer. And I heard, we had a meeting. Let's talk about Harold, and then we can do lame show things that are going to be used to let you guys just point and laugh at me ceaselessly. But for Harold Landry, important not just the security with 5 years, $87.5 million for him, a pass rusher, a 25-year-old he may not be at the peak of his position, right? Bud Dupree got a similar deal, and he's 29. That's a substantial difference in how much further this particular player has to go. And in fact, Lucas gave you some numbers yesterday that I want to refresh here about how much better the Titans defense was with Bud Dupree as opposed to without Bud Dupree, because I thought that was an interesting conversation. It made it seem like the more important player is Bud Dupree for the sake of the Titans defense. So I want to get those numbers first, Lucas, and then I want to hear from Greg Cosell about this, because Greg and I had an interesting conversation about these two that kind of contradicts your numbers.
So the Titans pass rush with Bud Dupree, who played 11 games in 2021. Total numbers, 38 sacks. That's an average of just under 3.5 per game. 189 total pressures. That's over 17 per game. 10 total turnovers. That's 1.36 per game. And without Bud Dupree, Harold Landry played in every game, by the way, of the 2021 season, including the playoffs.
Yep.
14 sacks, 2.3 per game, 101 total pressures, 16.8 per game, and 7 total turnovers, 1.17 per game.
Good.
Yes.
Next. Oh, you gave the numbers without already. My bad.
Yes, those were the numbers without. That second crop of numbers. So it goes from 2.3 sacks per game without Bud Dupree, and that jumps to 3.45 per game with Bud Dupree. And when his time with the Steelers, the numbers are an even wider gap. But yes, similar.
Similar. So there's a cousin Andrew says, say 10 total turnovers 10 times fast, Lucas. LOL.
No.
So outside of the numbers, just to summarize, pass rush better with Bud than without Bud. So that would lead people to think that Bud Dupree is the better pass rusher of the two. But in speaking to Greg Cosell of NFL Films about this yesterday, that was not the sense that I got from Greg's analysis, which he shared with me on the podcast. The division is going to be incredibly exciting to watch. And Greg, honestly, Titans are kind of going counterculture because they play the AFC West this coming season. So they're going to see those quarterbacks.
But, it raises the point which we discussed throughout the season, and then we can move on and talk about some of the other things. But it raises the question of how do the Titans see their offense as we go into the 2022 season? Obviously Derrick Henry at his best is the best back in the league. And they're not going to discard Derrick Henry. And by discard, I don't mean get rid of him, but I mean they're not going to say we're not going to hand him the ball.
Go away from him.
Right. But I think at some point, and I'd be very curious to be a fly on the wall for those conversations, and you may know more than I, but I think at some point you have to realize, and you and I actually discussed this, we talked about this when we were in Indianapolis, that it's really hard in this league now to go in and win 1916 and win 2017.
Right.
I mean, I remember distinctly, as do you, that after the Cincinnati loss in the playoffs, Mike Vrabel basically said, well, we played Titans football and it was our game. And in a sense, that's Titans football.
He was spot on. We've seen them play that game all year long.
Right. I mean, that's Titans football. So the question is, not that you want to abandon that totally and do a whole reworking, but at some point, do you need more offensively? And I would argue you do, but we'll see how they feel about it.
Sure, and maybe this is more in the weeds than we intended to get today, but I think they're hoping for just additional perspective in bringing Tim Kelly on as the passing game coordinator to at least provide them with some additional ideas in the room and kind of expand what they're trying to do offensively. But, I mean, that goes kind of into the next portion of the conversation, Greg. Harold Landry got a big old contract here in Tennessee. He's going to be playing alongside Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, and Bud Dupree for years to come, and this is one of the better pass rushes in football right now. We were talking before we started the podcast about Harold Landry and Bud Dupree as players. What's your kind of assessment of those two individually, and how much do they work within this defense together?
Well, I think Harold Landry's a better pass rusher than Bud Dupree. If you're just looking at pass rush traits and the ability to put pressure on the quarterback and just twitchiness and suddenness, words we like to use when we talk about pass rushers, I think Landry has more of that than Bud Dupree. Dupree is they're built differently. I mean, Landry's not a small man, but Landry is not a big, thickly built frame guy. Dupree is more thickly built. So, look, defense, this team has kind of been built on defense in the run game. You didn't want to lose your defense. I mean, Landry's a really important piece. He had his best year. They moved him around a bit this year. They became a little more versatile with their deployment of him. You really wanted to keep him if you could, and they did. So that's a really positive signing. And of course, the hope is this year, Bud Dupree, who was their big free agent signing a year ago, will not miss the games that he did this year, and they'll be able to play with Dupree, Landry, Simmons, and Autry, which is a pretty formidable front four in their sub fronts. So that's
Greg Cosell breaking down Harold Landry and Bud Dupree. I was surprised to hear him say that he believes Harold Landry to be the superior pass rusher, especially after the numbers that you just gave us on Bud, Lucas. That really stood out to me. By the way, 104.5 The Zone Spring Golf Classics Monday, April 25th at one of Middle Tennessee's most prestigious private courses, Old Natchez Country Club. The 22 Spring Golf Classic will be a day accompanied by great food, cocktails, and prizes. Choose between 2 flights, 8 a.m. or 1 p.m., and hit the links with us on Monday. I'm not actually golfing, but I'm doing the show out there. Did they ask you if you wanted to play golf? I think they asked us together in a meeting.
Yes, they did.
We wanted to play golf with people.
I'm down. I just don't want to bog people down.
I mean, if we can just go out there and drink and, not take it seriously, but because, I like to play golf. I'm terrible. I can't play golf during football season, so I haven't picked up a club in 6 months.
I enjoy it. I just can't be competitive with it, so I just don't want to anger the people in my group. If we're just going to screw around and have a good time, then I'm all in.
Maybe you and me just do that. Maybe we just take a golf court. Maybe we just run around and harass people in the 8 a.m. or 1 p.m. flights. Either way. Early bird tickets are on sale now through Sunday. Save over $100 by purchasing an early bird foursome today at 1045thezone.com. Go check it out. So, at this point, looking at the Titans pass rush, this is as talented a group that they have had since when? Curse, Tony Brown, Albert Haynesworth, and Kyle Vanden Bosch? That's probably the last time the Titans had a pass rush of this kind of consequence. And this is, by the way, curses, they don't have a curse out of this group. Unless you're kind of conflating what Javon's talent was at the time with what Jeff Simmons' talent is now, understanding that they're a different position. But, this is the best collection of defensive front four players that this franchise has had in the better part of a decade. And this is going to give them the best advantage to be able to keep pace in the AFC while also understanding, as we laid out, that they are going to need to do something on offense as well to keep up. Jael on YouTube says, I need all the info I can get on Caleb Farley and his progress. I don't have specifics for you, but it's my understanding that his rehabilitation has gone as well as anybody could hope for from the torn ACL. I don't have timelines or anything like that for you, but he should be ready to go, or at least in a place where they're starting to work him into things by the start of training camp and things of that nature. There's nothing to indicate to me that he would not be ready for the start of the season, but we'll keep you updated, and I'll try to get you some more specifics on that later on. As we wait to see what the Titans are going to do, I think the next logical move is to cut Jackrabbit Jenkins. I don't know when that's going to happen. As of right now, these things, they're already cap compliant, so there's less pressure on them to do something. If they do cut Jackrabbit, it tells you everything that you need to know about the situation with Caleb Farley as far as he is ready to play and as far as his health is concerned. But as you kind of go through things, keep in mind that if they keep Jackrabbit, this is going to be a problem as far as what it says about Caleb Farley's health and readiness more specifically. But I do not expect them to keep Jackrabbit Jenkins at this point. The savings associated with the remaining players on the roster who would make sense as cap casualties from just a financial standpoint. I'm going to give you 3 names, okay? Taylor Lewan. If you cut Taylor, $12.9 million. Now, I add parenthetically that I do not expect Taylor Lewan to be cut. If they were to cut Zach Cunningham, they would save $10.5 million against the salary cap. If they cut Zach Cunningham, they can also bring him back on a reworked deal. That is also a possibility. Now, if I was Zach Cunningham, I would say, kick rocks, because I think Zach Cunningham's worth that kind of money. And then finally, there would be a savings of $6.9 million. Nice. 1 million times. If you cut Jackrabbit Jenkins. So that would make the most sense right now. And it should happen. This is the natural progression of things. Because in a perfect world, Farley, Fulton, Molden in the slot, Kevin Byard, Amani Hooker, that may well be the best secondary in all of football, or one of the most top-to-bottom talented secondaries, starting secondaries, if you're going to count the nickel corner, in football next season. Depth, still something that has to be addressed. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. Last call for phone calls. If you want to jump in, 615-737-1045. We'll do the polls, and we'll get out of here on a Thursday. Coming up next.
Now, a TSSAA scoreboard update on 104.5 The Zone.
Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. 1A girls action continues from Murfreesboro in progress. Wayne County all over Cloudland in the fourth quarter, 51-28. The winner of that game will move on to face Dresden in the 1A girls Final Four. Keeping it in that classification on the other side of the bracket, coming up next, a 1:15 tip-off between Clay County and Gleason, and then it's Mackenzie and North Green going head-to-head at 2:30. Drunk driving is the ultimate form of unsportsmanlike conduct. The Tennessee Highway Safety Office reminds you that fans don't let fans drive drunk.
Okay. College basketball right now, just to kind of give us a breather from the NFL news. Duke's up by 4, only 4 right now as the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament over Syracuse. Jim Boeheim is he's going to kill people.
We talked about this off the air yesterday. What if Syracuse messes around and wins the ACC?
Upsetting Mike Krzyzewski from beyond the grave at this point. That's happening in the ACC tournament. Elsewhere, if you're keeping up with SEC play, it's currently Florida and Texas A&M playing in Tampa in the first game, the first of 4 games that will take place today. You have Vanderbilt, who beat Georgia last night. They will play Alabama. And you have Mississippi State and South Carolina, which, of course, the winner will play Tennessee when they advance. So we'll have we're going to have a lot of conversations about college basketball tomorrow. Ron Slay's going to be here with us, and we'll preview the Tennessee game. But Lucas, we have a thing. We have a thing that we need to bring people to.
It is a thing.
It is a thing. The thing is at Party Foul next Thursday, the Party Foul in Donaldson. If you want to come hang out with us, so apparently our show is being preempted by college basketball a couple of days next week, as is 3HL, I think. But we're going to do the show at Thursday at the Party Foul in Donaldson. We're only going to be on the air for an hour, and then I would like to get drunk and watch college basketball with people, wouldn't you?
I will be quickly migrating to Party Foul once we hop off the air at 11.
By then, I'll probably be sloshed. So hopefully, if if you're somebody who likes to maybe get sick every year when conference tournament play starts to come about, you want to watch a little day basketball. Maybe you're on your lunch break. Come hang out at Party Foul in Donaldson, because Lucas and I are going to be kicking it there and watching college basketball with you if you choose to hang out with us there. And if not, I understand. But we'd love to see you. All right, let's do polls.
Hello, my name is Borat.
Oh!
There is a show in America called Buck Reising. I like very much. As a man named Lucas, like my producer, Azamat Bagatov, will update something called Final Pollings. I'm very excited, very excited. Do it, Lucas. La, 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 la.
No.
Oh, when he showed me that this morning, I doubled over.
A Borat?
Yes.
Rhett Bryan has a Borat impression in his arsenal.
He's got everything. And there's more where that came from.
Uh-oh.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. Powered by Ford. Driven by people.
I got nervous when Borat said the polls. I did.
Who would you rather be? Yeah, there could be something there.
Questionable.
Who would you rather be the Colts starting quarterback? Carson Wentz or Jimmy G? 65% say Carson Wentz.
Really?
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I'm shocked by that. Carson Wentz was not a bad he was not a great quarterback last year, but he wasn't a bad quarterback last year. Jimmy G is a bad quarterback objectively. I would much prefer to see Jimmy G twice a year if I was a Titans fan.
What thank you gift should Titans fans send Chris Ballard? Titans Today says, sends in a picture to fix their QB problems with a photo of Logan Woodside.
Oh, no. No. Listen, I think Titans fans owe Chris Ballard and Carson Wentz, who have done just immeasurable damage to that franchise for not just the immediate, but in the future, because they have 6 draft picks this year. They don't have a first-round draft pick. They've just gotten picks back for Carson Wentz, but, a couple of third-rounders. It's not going to change the game, and you're certainly not going to find your franchise quarterback there. You ought to send them edible arrangements of all shapes, sizes, colors. They deserve all of these things.
Goody says send him a fruit basket with the worst tasting fruit in the world. Christian says send him Isaiah Wilson's gear. It's slightly used, basically in new condition.
And the only game that Isaiah Wilson played in was at the Indianapolis Colts. 3 snaps in victory formation and a field goal block where he got planted squarely on his giant butt.
Who is the next Titans player that you would cut? Josh says Jenkins, probably, and then Darrington Evans.
Yeah, Darrington Evans can go. I don't think they have much use for him, but right now you don't necessarily have a solution at backup running back. I don't think he's going to be it, though. Jackrabbit Jenkins is the guy that cut. You don't save any substantial money by cutting Darrington Evans. Jackrabbit Jenkins is almost $7 million. You need that money. You want that money because you need some wide receivers, some tight ends, and some offensive linemen when free agency starts next week.
Jeff says, cut Rashaan Evans. You don't have to cut Rashaan Evans.
Nope, he's gone.
A free agent.
Yep.
Who is the better pass rusher, Dupree or Landry? 63% say Harold Landry.
I would say that is indeed Harold Landry. I would have said Bud Dupree before Greg kind of showed me the ways in which he's talking about the evaluation of pass rushers. Yeah, I think they're in a good space. They are going to continue to make life hell for quarterbacks on the opposite side. You heard Harold Landry talk about it earlier today. A big part of the reason he wanted to be back is not just because he would have to pick up and move his family, but because they're really, really good here.
Yeah, the good news is you don't have to pick. They're on the field together.
They're on the field together.
Tennessee fans, who would you rather face in the SEC tournament semifinals, Mississippi State or South Carolina? They will face off tonight to determine the winner who gets the right to play Tennessee. 68% say South Carolina, who the Vols have already beaten twice this season.
You know, South Carolina hasn't had a bad year, but like Frank Martin hasn't done anything overwhelming with them. They're both kind of in the same. They're just kind of these middling, in a good SEC, there's just these kind of middling programs. I don't know that there's a discernible difference to me between Mississippi State and South Carolina.
Yeah, State's got a player that can give you more problems than Iverson Molinar. South Carolina doesn't have anybody to that extent. But look, credit Frank Martin. They've won most of the games they're supposed to win. You could do worse with that roster getting 18 wins this season, potentially 19 if they can get it done tonight.
Yeah, Mississippi State finished 500 in the conference, 8-8, 17-12 in regular season play. Vandy honestly should have had him. Vandy should have had him. They lost that Vanderbilt game. They lost that Mississippi State game, rather, 74-69 a couple of weeks ago. I think that Tennessee, whomever they play, they should be able to handle their business, provided they don't have another, 6 of 42 from 3.
Sam, with his Power T profile picture on Twitter, says, I'd rather get beat and get out of that godforsaken event, if that gives you any idea of how Tennessee fans feel about the SEC tournament.
Oh, really? No. We're going to fight about this tomorrow with Slay, because I think Slay feels the exact same way. I think Slay just wants them to get ready for the NCAAs and not worry about the conference tournament. And I feel differently. I feel that they need to do something of consequence in this SEC tournament. We'll talk about that tomorrow, because our time now is done. Blaine and Mickey got you next. I'll see you tonight on A to Z Sports Prime Time.